Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 90 of the White Knuckle Podcast, powered by Ozonics. Undetectable, undeniable. Thanks for tuning back into episode number 90 of the White Knuckle Podcast. I can't believe it's 90 episodes already that we've been doing this. It's been a short 2 years, and it looks like it's going to get busier and busier. So we have a huge 2019 plan for White Knuckle, and it's going to be an exciting one. So we look forward to bringing you that. Before we do, Todd and I had a chance to sit down and recap our season, and it was quite a season. It was a huge learning experience for me, as you'll hear, and some of the things that I probably say, some of you are going to scratch your head and go, duh, but I think we can all probably relate in a lot of these situations that we get into and talk about, and hopefully there's some valid points that strike a chord with some of us that we can maybe write down and make a note for next year. But with that, let's get on with the show. As Todd and I recap 2018. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the White Knuckle Podcast. I am joined by the one, the only Todd Pringnitz has came out of the baby's room for an hour to talk to us about, actually, both of us do a season recap. Todd, how's it going, man?
Oh, my goodness gracious, dude. I mean, up until like literally 30 seconds ago, packing orders for tree thrasher, making sure the baby's sleeping, all that fun stuff. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, but it's been a crazy hunting season on top of it.
It has. I just have a quick question, and then we'll get on to the task at hand. How many people have asked you so far how the baby's sleeping? Like a million?
I don't know. I usually volunteer that information because I know that's like the go-to. Like, how do they eat? How are they sleeping? Is mama able to breastfeed? Those are like the go-to questions. But so far we've been lucky. We had a beautiful little baby boy that we named Baker Allen Pringnitz. He weighed 5 pounds 10 ounces, and mama and baby are doing really, really well.
Awesome. We'll give you a big round of applause for getting Katie through that. I know it was a little bit daunting for you. I remember getting the text message and then not hearing from you, and then texting you saying, what's going on? And you're like, 10 minutes Csection. That's all I got. And then I didn't hear from you till the next day. So
yeah, it was it was crazy, man. I've never really been to the hospital or been like in a situation like that where I had to be in a surgery room or that. But yeah, she had to get an emergency Csection. Things were just not coming along as quickly as they had hoped, and so the baby's heart rate dropped a couple times, and so in a matter of like 10 minutes, man, they were in go mode and they were wheeling her into surgery. So we had our baby at Iowa City, up in Iowa City at Mercy Hospital, and they did a fantastic job, and we had the utmost in confidence, and they did a great job. Katie's healing perfect, and the baby's been doing good. So yeah, man, now I'm struggling to get back into whitetail mode, I'll be honest.
You know, after the season I'm going to say we had, it's not hard to, not want to go, I guess. For me, I'm a little bit burned out just because I hit it this year harder than I ever have. I don't know if that's true for you. I suspect you hit it just as hard as you always do. But I guess I got a little bit of a taste of what it's like to hunt that much, just because I put a lot of effort into, learning this new property, and then, spending a lot of time pounding the pavement on the way to Iowa.
Yeah, you put the miles in, and that's unfortunately the negative part with hunting out of state and traveling to hunt. But Yeah, it was a tough season here overall. We got hit with the HD really bad. Didn't really know how bad it was until we got into season. And I knew we were in trouble around, I think it was like the 26th or 27th of October. I checked my trail cameras, and it was just depressing because you're kind of keeping the faith and holding out hope that some big ones might show up, into our hunting areas just before the rut because we have good food and all that. And I didn't see a lot of bucks, and then I went and looked at last year's pictures at the same time frame and all the same spots because I usually keep all my cameras in the same areas pretty much year after year, just knowing where the routes are. And when I went back and looked at last year's pictures, I was just depressed instantly. It made me sick because we had probably 2 to 3 times as many bucks last year to chase as we did this year. We just got hammered. And then, dude, I mean, when you came down, and I think the first time you ever went out to stand, you found 3 dead deer on the way to it. It's like just agonizing feeling of sickness that you can't control. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, there was I don't know. It was the oddest set of circumstances that I think I've encountered hunting. It's like, you're in Iowa, and you hate to operate under the pretense that, well, anything can happen at any time, especially, with my Spartan camera sitting at your place at night. We're sitting there and like, oh, there's a big one. There's a big one from today at my lease. And it was just, it was tough. It was tough, but it was a good learning experience. And for anybody who does hunt out of state or thinks that going to Iowa on a DIY hunt, which as much as this was a DIY hunt, it wasn't, because you know the land and where deer are going to be and how they're going to react. It was there's still a learning curve, and I got a glimpse. I'm fortunate that I got a glimpse into what you have to deal with every year, and quite frankly, I haven't said this to you before, but quite frankly, I'm surprised that you've killed the caliber of deer that you have with the deck that's stacked against you in a lot of cases.
It's the one thing I was thinking about during the season after I was so fortunate to get a crack at this big buck was, I think a lot of people think that because I'm consistently successful that somehow gets easier each year, and the truth of the matter, it really doesn't. If anything, it gets harder because you got to keep raising the bar or trying to stay at a shooting 6-7-year-old deer is not easy no matter how you slice it. And this year it certainly wasn't. But, that's kind of what I sign up for, and that's kind of that's the challenge that I enjoy. And if anything, the only thing that has gotten easier is I'm more patient and I don't put so much stress on myself like I used to. I still put a ton of pressure and stress because, it's our job, and, it's how I make a living to a certain extent. But, dude, when you've been down it through the area, I've been hunting this area for a long enough time. I know you can't just make deer show up. So you got to do the best you can. And like when I had you coming down different times, Jason and I would be talking on the phone or be texting and be like, all right, be here next Thursday or be here on Tuesday or whatever. You could fix your schedule just based on conditions and timing and knowing like, all right, there's a spot that you need to hunt that spot during this time frame, during that wind, and I think you might get a crack at this buck. And of course, you just never got a crack at one. But the one bonus is I already know the area enough, like it's just guaranteed homework, so to speak, where I kind of have, a background in knowing what these bucks will do generally. So it saves a lot of time and a lot of wasted hunts, figuring the area out, so to speak. So, man, we tried, didn't we?
Yeah, we definitely did. I think we threw everything at them but the kitchen sink. I don't think we really pushed the envelope because there really wasn't a need to. I saw a couple good bucks the entire time I hunted there, and that's just not typical of what you would experience. Sam Wiersma, I don't think I've talked to you, but Sam called me the other night, and Sam's, for those of you who don't know who Sam is, he's the guy that filmed me shoot Splitter, and he also hunts in the same area that Todd's at down there. He's from Wisconsin, so he's only able to go every few years, but he was shocked and surprised at what little I saw in comparison with what his experience has been. You know, that said, it was again a good experience. I learned a lot. I didn't get a deer, but I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about the way you hunt, and it gives me I don't know, some more tools to put in my tool bag and go from there.
Yeah, that's all you can do. I mean, I learned a lot this season, and the one thing I did really, I guess, kind of reiterated to me was the importance of food again. With the lack of deer in the area, you have to kind of look at it from two different perspectives. Yeah, we lost a lot of our deer because of HD, but that also creates a situation where there's not nearly as many noses and eyes in the woods. So you could get a little bit more aggressive on certain hunts. And the bucks had to look a little bit harder. So, the food plots became even more important, the green food plots, because you were basically focusing the fewer deer, which means that, the bucks were going to be even more consistent in those areas. And that's exactly what ended up happening. The only reason I got a shot on the buck I did was because I had the best spot. He actually was living about a mile from my farm on one of my friend's farms. And I knew the buck was there, and going into late October, all of a sudden he started showing up on trail cameras doing his little scouting missions. But it's still at the back of my mind, I thought, man, he's just not going to be killable consistently, on my farm. And then sure enough, like one morning I went into a different area, and I swear it was him. There was a buck bedded in the food plot in the morning when I was heading out. I hate mornings. And his eyes looked about a foot apart, and that's the only buck that fit that MO, just because this was the biggest buck in the territory that I knew of. And sure enough, ended up getting he was on a hot doe out in the sanctuary, came right past the blinds, came straight downwind. Was up there smelling the Ozonics, and I ended up getting a shot. I don't want to ruin the story for when we put together the episode for it, but it was a miracle. I thankfully was able to put just a kick butt 15-yard shot on him, and he didn't go very far, and so it ended up being probably one of the most enjoyable track jobs I've been on in a long time, because I knew he was laying there dead, had a kick butt blood trail, and man, the dang thing died right on one of my access trails. So literally I could drive the four-wheeler right up to him and pick him up. So it was like the easiest recovery I've had in years. And you know how bad some of them have been.
Yeah, I do. It's probably the easiest recovery that I can remember you having. Honestly, I don't remember one that's been easier. But
no, because I just knew he was dead right out of the gate. And a lot of times you don't. Even if you have a good shot, sometimes there's always that question or that doubt. But man, as I watched him for probably 60, 70 yards, and about the time he hit the timber on the other side of the plot, he was already starting to kind of do the side-to-side wobble. So it was just like the greatest feeling in the world. Just reminded me one more time why we love to hunt these animals with a bow, and how, one hunt can change your luck. And unfortunately, you just didn't have that day this year. And, there's a lot more people who can relate to that than success, Right.
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge. The one question that I wanted to ask you that I haven't asked you is how is it that you either compartmentalize or just sort of file away the fact that no matter what anybody says, the pressure is on you to kill a deer? Because a large part of your whole life is based really in the hunting industry and designing products. And if you're not able to deliver in the way I see it, if you're not able to kill big deer the way that you have, it probably dilutes some of your street cred, if you will. So how do you compartmentalize the amount of pressure that you have to get a big deer and still enjoy the process?
I don't know, man. I think experience trumps everything, and that experience gives me confidence. And I'll just be one part of it. The honest part is, I've always suffered from target panic, especially for whatever reason the last few years. And I think it really boils down to lack of practice. I just haven't put the time in practice because we've just been too busy building businesses and the hunting properties. I mean, it's never ending. So I just haven't shot that much. So even out today, I was out I haven't shot that much at all, the last couple of weeks. The last couple of days I've been shooting, and I've been shooting just terribly. But I had a bobcat come in earlier in the season. And so I was able to get that rush going, that adrenaline rush. And I put just a perfect shot on it. And it was instant, like, okay, man, don't overthink it. In the moment of truth is when I really shine. And I don't know why or how, but some guys are just fantastic at target shooting. And when you put a live animal in front of them or a big buck, they completely lose it. For me, whatever reason, I think it's just my makeup, the way my brain and my biology works. Dude, when I have that adrenaline rush, I can think clearly. I can focus and not overthink things. I just go into autopilot and shoot. I don't even remember aiming at the buck I killed this year, to be 100% honest. All of a sudden the arrow was in it, and it was just right where it needed to be. So, but I think that all drums down to experience, 30 years of bow hunting and just shooting a lot of animals. And I think for a lot of guys, if you want to become a better hunter, you are not going to do it in your backyard. Shoot does. Start shooting more does. And if you can't be killing and hunting a big buck each year, then you got to figure out a way to recreate that experience through does and just get that killing experience, because what you do in the backyard does not matter whatsoever when you're up in a tree. And, the other crazy part, dude, is I swear to you, since I started self-filming, I have made better shots on animals than when I used to have Kyle film for me and before that. I think it almost is a positive distraction for me, where I'm always so focused on the camera that when I'm at full draw and pulling the trigger, I really haven't even been thinking about it, So I don't know, man, but I would say experience has a lot to do with it, and just, experience and a little bit of luck too, bud.
Well, luck never hurts the equation.
Because there's always an element of luck. I don't care what anybody says. Like, you can be as good as you can get, but there's so many small factors and so many things that can happen. But I think the reason I'm confident and the reason why I can kill these big deer is primarily I am able to hunt every day and pick and choose my hunts accordingly. But you got to be out there, and I've just figured out a way, like by hunting right in my backyard, I can still work during the day. I can hunt how I want to hunt. But I'm still able to get out there on a daily basis. And like with you, we were picking and choosing those days. It's like, sometimes I was right and the movement was great. Other times you didn't see anything worth a poop. And it was just like frustrating for me. I'm like, oh, you should have been here yesterday. That's always the way it always is. So that's the hard part. But I guess everything just happens for a reason. You just got to keep on going. Like this afternoon, it's supposed to be like up in the upper 40s, almost to 50 degrees. But there's a little piece of me that we have a southeast wind. So I'm going to go try that sanctuary spot, I think. Even though I don't have any intel, my gut just tells me, dude, on these warm-up days, sometimes late season, they generate a lot of movement because the deer have been freezing their butts off, especially these cold nights, cold mornings. Sometimes they just like to get up and move around during daylight and do some browsing and doing some checking in areas. And eating on these green plots. And so, I'm going to go give it a shot. So I guess I never give up. I always keep going. And then I guess the last piece I would say is I don't think about individual hunts. I think about long-term. I think about the full season, and that, each hunt, if it's a failure, it's just one step closer to success. And so you just got to keep going, keep grinding. And I got busted 2 different times by 2 different bucks, mature bucks. One, there's the wind had just changed in the wrong direction. And I had literally that fridge buck at 5 yards in front of my blind. And all of a sudden, boom, he just locked up, took off running. I'm like, what happened? Dude, the wind was perfect. And then it ended up not being. It absolutely switched 180 degrees right at prime time. And then the other time I was going in the morning and freaking the buck, one of the mature bucks, was standing in a scrape right when I got to the plot. And, looking at me in my flashlight. And so I'm like, what do you do? So I just crouched down, and he ended up running away. But he snuck back into the plot right at first light and caught. He must have just crept in enough, just looked at the blind and caught some movement inside of it and snorted and ran away. And I was just like, before the hunt even started, that's the stuff I deal with too, dude. And it's just, it happens. But I just am fortunate. I can play the numbers game and just continue to hunt. And still be hunting good spots and moving around and, have opportunities that some guys just don't have the opportunity because they have short periods of time they can hunt. So I think that's probably my biggest advantage is being able to hunt in my backyard and being able to hunt, for a long period of time, 2-3 weeks during the rut. You can't put a price on days in the field, man. That's it.
Well, I think a big mistake that a lot of people make is taking their rutcation, not that taking a vacation, the first week of November, last week of October, second week of November, whatever the case may be. I think one of the mistakes that you make is feeling like you do need to be out there all the time. And I get it. You to an extent you do, but in doing that, you preclude yourself to making a lot of mistakes. And when I say a lot of mistakes, it's like getting lazy, walking in, walking out, trying to, maybe set too many marginal win spots. And listen, that all works on a 3-year-old. And if you're, and if that's what you're, that's what you're after, or that's what you're going to kill, or that's what's available to you, then by all means. But the one thing I learned is not to get too discouraged about not killing one, because what I was looking to kill wasn't just, any average deer. I mean, the one deer, how old do you think Mastodon is?
He's 7. He's at least 7. He's absolute tank buck.
And then the fridge, I mean, those deer have all been around the block. And the one thing that I've learned in now hunting mature deer, not just here in Wisconsin this year, but in Iowa as well, is it's a different animal. It's a complete difference between hunting a 3 and sometimes even a 4-year-old than it is a 5, 6, 7, whatever year old. They up their game just that much between 3 and 4 or 4 and 5, whatever the case may be. So, I think, people have to take a step back when they're in that situation and evaluate what their goal actually is. And if you're really going to go out and try to kill a mature 6, 7, 8-year-old, whatever the case is, then you have to pick your battles, so to speak, I think. Am I wrong?
Absolutely right. What I was going to say is probably the biggest difference between like the 6 and 7-year-old deer. To me, hunting those animals are a bit of an advantage if you've been hunting that area over the year, consistently, and the areas, because the patterns that those big mature deer, not only the ones you're hunting, but the ones before them, what they had been doing under different conditions, different times of the year, different parts of the rut. They're more predictable, and at the same time, you have to be fine-tuned in exactly where you're going to kill them, because it's not like you can just go sit on a field edge and expect them to walk along that field edge at some point during a hunt. They're just not like that. They just don't walk down field edges, and that's why they're 6 or 7 years old.
Right.
But I always call it from point A to point B. But if you know where point A and point B is and their travel routes, then they're much more predictable in being able to catch them at those spots. And they will be there. It's just a matter of whether you time it appropriately. So, like, one of the topics that I'm going to be bringing to the seminars and it's something that just I am fascinated with, is the routines and the circuits that these bucks take and live by year after year after year. And it's almost I envision it in like a round pattern where there's like 4 or 5 different core areas that you can just imagine being circles around, and there's a line that connects each one of those circles. And if you can imagine, each one of those little core areas, the hard part a lot of guys have, including myself, and let's just use, on the south side of our farm, Jason, right now, they're still standing crops on the neighbors. They still haven't gotten any of their crops out. So all of a sudden it shifted all the core areas on one direction of the farm. So, like Mastodon and some of those, we only really had for Mastodon one of those core areas. So let's say he has 4 or 5 of those. To predict when he's going to be in our core area on one of those travel days, dude, I mean, it's impossible to do. Nobody's that good.
Right.
It's when you can hunt 2 or 3 or 4 of those core areas and bounce and back and forth between them based on the winds, your access. That's when you can really get deadly in killing those animals. But like with Mastodon, it was just a random. We had one of the core areas that he was hitting, 1 or 2 maybe if you want to call it social areas in the food plots, and you just have to get lucky. And we tried to get lucky a bunch of different times on him through the season and just weren't able to put 2 and 2 together and to get the shot. But that's really what it comes down to is a lot of times guys are watching these deer and getting a lot of nighttime trail camera pictures in like on the 4-day cycle, 5-day cycle. Mm-hmm. If you're getting only, pictures of a buck once a week and it's in the middle of the night, you have one of those core areas. You got to figure out a way to get into more of those individual core areas, and then just figure out how that buck is traveling between those areas, and then figure out where you can catch him vulnerable on different winds. And if you can hunt all 4 or 5 of those core areas that he's bouncing around between and figure out what winds and on what spots are better, then it just becomes like statistical probability. Like, okay, got a northeast wind, boom, I can access this, hunt that spot. The next day you got a south wind, okay, well, I'm not going to want to hunt the exact spot. I'm going to have to be able to come in from a different area, otherwise I'm going to have blown that out. And then you figure out, okay, well, if you caught my scent, the day before coming in this way, if he's still in the area and he's going to be going to this other core area or avoiding the one I was just in, how is he going to come through there, and how can I maybe dupe him, because he's going to be planning on me doing the same thing, or what I did the day before might just push him a little bit to do something different. And all those things, experience just comes to mind more than anything, because that's where I can go back and remember the different bucks, and in a lot of cases, those exact bucks, what they did the year before, or when the crops were corn there, or when the crops were beans there, different ruts, when the temperatures or conditions. And that's what I've gotten good at doing is taking all of those elements and then just making good guesses, basically. But that's what you're still guessing.
Right. Absolutely. It absolutely is still a guess. And, sometimes, the old adage that I'd rather be lucky than good, I think, I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I'd rather be good than lucky, but luck does play a part in it without a doubt. Absolutely, without a doubt. Hey, real quick, you mentioned the fact that you're going to be out on tour here this winter, this spring. What do you know any of the dates yet, and what exactly are you going to be up to, if you can let everybody know?
Yeah, we're gonna be going crazy across the country here, doing a huge trade show circuit this year. Both for Tree Thrasher and myself, I'm going to be doing seminars at each one of the shows we're at pretty much every day. And so we're going to try to keep everybody updated on our website and on our social media pages as far as what shows we're going to be at, and then what days and what times my seminars are. But basically, we'll be at the Harrisburg show, which runs in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania from February 2nd to the 10th. That show, I'll be doing a seminar daily in the afternoon sometime, and we'll provide information later. We will be at the Iowa Deer Classic, which is March 1st through the 3rd. I'll be doing 2 seminars there. I'll be at the Michigan Deer and Turkey Spectacular, March 8th through the 10th. The Ohio Deer and Turkey Spectacular in Columbus, Ohio, between March 15th and the 18th. And then we'll be finishing up in Wisconsin, in Madison, on the March 29th through the 31st, which is about a week early than usual this year. But I'll be doing seminars daily at each one of those shows as well. And I would really encourage everybody to stop by and check it out. I guarantee you'll learn something, because I usually do from each seminar just based on the questions and some of the information that we share during those times. But I'll give you some different perspectives and be able to put a visual on a lot of these theories and a lot of these discussions that we have today, just like about core areas. Like I already have envisioned the graphics that I want to use. But for me, sometimes just going through some of these techniques and recalling that actually helps me learn and reminds me, because, dude, you get lost in the shuffle of the hunt sometimes and you get lost in your own world. It's just like, we were talking, I don't know, a couple weeks ago when it was a Hail Mary hunt. I decided to do a run and gun setup on this ridge that overlooks basically one of the big food plot areas, one of these core areas that Jason and I had been hunting. And, once I get up there and I set up and have the hunt, I ended up having an opportunity at one of the big bucks. This Fridge Perry buck came right to my tree. I thrashed him right to the tree, and he ended up busting me. But it was one of those things after the fact. I was talking to Jason about it and just like, dude, why weren't we hunting there earlier in the season? And like, dude, you just get caught up in the shuffle. And the reason why and I kind of like had to remind myself, like, okay, Mastodon, that's right. Yeah, that's right. We were trying to kill Mastodon, and Mastodon would only come out into a couple different spots that I was very, very familiar with over the years. And so, when you're hunting those 6-7-year-old deer, sometimes you sacrifice seeing a lot of deer and sometimes success just because, if you want to hunt that one animal and exactly where he's going to come out, you got to hunt that spot and sacrifice maybe killing a different mature deer or seeing a bunch of other deer in the process. And in that case, Mastodon's kind of a prick because he's only vulnerable in a couple spots. And so I think we both kind of sacrificed that season or part of the season for that deer in those areas. And, you live and learn from it. Next year or the next time you come hunt, I guarantee you we'll be set up on that ridge because it just was absolutely perfect with all the conditions and all the food being on the neighbors. That was just the nearest thick cover bedding area. And that was a new thing for this year. I've never experienced having, a couple hundred acres of standing crops on the neighbor's farm right there. That changed the whole dynamic.
It did. It really did. And I'm gonna take it a step farther and blame Tyler Tissue. I remember sitting in your kitchen, eating tacos. We had the phone on speaker, and that morning, it was going to be a Saturday morning. It was going to be like 6 degrees out, and we were talking about me going into that spot to find that stand that you and I and Dan and Mario walked by this spring, and he talked me out of it. So I'm going to blame it on Tyler.
And dude, to be honest, the reason I never really was that excited was I had meant to get up there and I had 2 stands. One of them was too far out of the way in one direction, and the other one was too much in the middle, kind of in the other. And I had meant that was the one last spot that I ran out of time, and I said, if we end up hunting there, we'll just do a run and gun. And to be honest, I thought I kind of planned on you and I actually doing a run and gun together up there and like kind of scouting it and hanging it together. And I was going to plan on just filming you. But a lot of times you're just playing the winds, and like in order to hunt that ridge properly, I figured it out. And it's a northeast wind. That's what you need. And years ago, when I first hung that first set, that kind of is more in the middle that we walked past, Jay. Mm-hmm. I had planned that for a northwest, and the first time I hunted with a northwest, it wasn't right, and the wind ended up blowing right down in that valley, and most of the deer ended up coming downwind. And we have our Ozonics and everything, but dude, that changes your hunt, So like as soon as I was up there with that northeast wind, had been blowing northeast for several days, which would stack one side of the bedding area, so to speak, and just it puts them in a position where those bucks could be bedded in those buck bedding areas that I'm familiar with from over the years, shed hunting, finding a bunch of sheds up there, watching what the deer do year after year. And in years past, there just hadn't been a big buck I wanted to kill living in the area, so I just haven't focused up there. And so my attention was elsewhere. Shame on me. But now, I learned from this season, next year on a northeast wind, I'm going to have a stand set to kill whatever buck is bedded in that bedding area, because I know what trail he's going to be taking now, brother. So after hunting, one of the things I was very curious to hear about is Jason and I had the chance to spend a little bit of time hunting together and just strategizing. And I think when you share camp during the hunting season, you learn a lot. If nothing else, just with conditions and how to adapt to conditions and different things that happen throughout. So what if I had to ask you, what was, I guess, something that stuck out as a surprise or something that you didn't expect at hunting in Iowa or hunting with me? And then what is something that I guess maybe is a consistent or something that you saw that you brought back with you that is something that you can apply anywhere? And then something maybe that is specific to Iowa that it might work there, but I just don't see it working elsewhere.
Wow, that's a lot of questions.
Yeah, that's like a 3-in-1 deal, but
I guess first, I just want to plead ignorance or whatever to the whole process of hunting a mature deer. I think that anyone that comes from hunting, rural farm country, Wisconsin, Columbia County, Wisconsin, to be specific, and jumps into that world, goes from playing in the, high school level to the minor leagues in a big hurry. And I went down there with the intention on, killing a mature deer, and it's just a different ball game. Now, there's a couple things that, I don't know, a couple takeaways that I had. I spend way too much time being way too careless about the entire situation. And when I say that, I mean I'm too careless about how much scent I'm leaving. I'm too careless about how much noise I'm making. So I was a bit shocked to walk in with you on our first run and gun where I felt like I think I said it before on another podcast, I was in Nam and you were, giving me the hand signals to stop, move. And then when I'd break a branch, you looked at me like you wanted to strangle me.
Oh, the old big feet.
Right. And so it's the little things. It's the little things. And I guess whether it was, hunting in Iowa or hunting in Wisconsin, it is the little things. And when you're after these bigger deer, it's the little tiny things cumulatively that add up to success. So I would say that the biggest takeaway I had was, the little things. Be quiet when you're getting in there. Have a strong plan, to get in there. Everybody talks about access. If I had $1 for every magazine article that's, talks about access, I'd be rich. But it's one thing to know about having good access. It's another thing to properly utilize good access. And when they say access is everything, but you have to use it properly. And you're the master at that, in my opinion, because you've figured out ways to get into to deer that I would have never thought of, and it's the reason I would have never thought of it is because I've never had to think at that level before, because I think the deer that I was hunting weren't at the level of the deer that you're hunting in terms of their knowledge or their weariness or whatever the case may be. So. I don't know. I learned a lot about cover. There's a difference between where a deer is going to bed in September than where, specifically a buck, than where he's going to bed in November. And that difference may be the same in September and November if the cornfield is still there. But if the cornfield isn't there, then it probably changes. And just paying attention to the small, finite details. We all know that we should be in hill country hunting that third of the way down the military crest, whatever you want to call it, in all those things. But those are all, like I talked with Jeff Genke last week, those are all things that are on the average.
Sure. Yep.
It's those little details that are often overlooked, that make the biggest difference. So
it gives you a starting point and a consistency, at least you got to measure against something, I guess. But like, just for example, I was wrong when I did a run and gun for Fridge last time. There were 3 trails that came out of this bedding area, and one of them was right along the edge of this opening that I'd actually opened myself doing timber stand improvement. So it just made this hole basically right in the timber. And when I looked at that, I thought, man, I just don't see a big buck walking across that. And I was right. But the problem was I had basically 2 or 3 trees to choose from. One took me off from where I could get a shot on the farthest trail. And so I put all my eggs in one basket. It was the last hunt before the season. So I figured I'm going to give it all. But the one tree basically was right over top of the main trail. But in the back of my mind, I thought, when Fridge comes out of that bedding area, he's not going to be taking that main trail. He's going to do something just a little bit different. And I thought I might be able to just get that extra 5 yards on him. And what did he do? He followed that main trail right to the tree. So learning lesson for me too. Sometimes, I would have never known that unless I just went and did that. I could have sat in the other tree, but shoulda, coulda, woulda. Then he would have probably gone a different direction. I mean, that's just the way these whitetails are. Sometimes you just can't, second guess yourself. But I had a lot of fun just sharing the time with you in the field, and it kind of helped me, kind of again think about details and you get lost in your own little shuffle. But dude, I didn't figure all this crap out on my own. Some of it I have, but a lot of stuff was just like your situation, hunting with other guys who are big buck killers, and man, in a couple of hunts, they sure can teach you what you've been doing wrong.
Right. I 100% with 100% certainty can say next year will be a different story. Let me back up and just say doing this podcast is a blessing and a curse at the same time.
You're right. It is.
Because you get all of these ideas in your head, and then you stop thinking about things being, I'm going to quote Bronson Strickland, on the average. On the average, deer are going to follow that 1/3 line. However, hey, stupid, if you see a trail that's got 40 rubs on it that's not on the 1/3 line, chances are you should probably go hunt it. Now, maybe they're only using that at night, but if it's got 40 rubs on it, on the average, there's probably going to be a deer using it. So, I was freaked out because I was, I took things into I took
textbook, so to speak.
Yeah, they were hard and fast rules. Okay, the sun's going to set, my thermals are going to go down no matter what, and the sun's going to come up, my thermals are going to go up no matter what. Well, I can't hunt any of those spots because oh shoot! Now, I guess I'll sit on the edge. Well, a big buck's never going to come down the edge. So, again, I would do things a lot different. And I will do things a lot different. I'm fortunate that I've got, a long time to hunt, especially on my lease. And that was as much of a process as hunting the public land. I didn't have people to deal with necessarily in the place that I was hunting, exactly, but there was still people to deal with, and there was still new country and all that stuff. And the other thing that I would say is, for those of us that are hunting private land, boy, when that farmer tells you, yeah, I see deer cross here all the time, in your mind, you're like, oh, that's stupid. I don't know why they'd be crossing there. No, it's not stupid. They're doing it for a reason. Quit trying to figure out the reason and go sit there. And I would just about guarantee you, by the time you've sat there, you'll figure out the reason. And a good case in point is Doug, one of the farmers who owns the land that I lease, mentioned to me that I always see deer cross here or whatever he said. And I'm like, I don't get that. I don't get that. That does not make any sense to me. So I took a trail camera and I stuck it there. And then I forgot that I stuck it there, and I grabbed it last week. And, well, guess what? There's a reason that deer cross there all the time. And I didn't know it, but I went and looked at the trail camera, and I wasn't hunting that area, so I got down in there a little farther after I looked at the trail camera pictures, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it all makes sense now. It all makes sense now. So it's again, those are little tiny details, but the little tiny details that make the big difference, I think. So.
Oh, God, you mentioned a farmer. I remember last year when I was hunting DL, I went and talked with one of the local farmers, and I knew where he lived, and he basically just has some huge ag fields, but I always try to just at least run into different guys so I can kind of get intel from them. And he's an old timer, so I knew he couldn't see very good, but he was telling me about, yeah, I saw this great big buck bedded out in the middle of that field last night with a doe. And so I'm thinking, okay, there's only one buck that he would be able to see from his house. And so I knew it was DL instantly. I'm like, it's got to be him. If not another giant, but it just put another, okay, core area point, okay, he's out here. That makes sense. This is where I believe he's going to be bedding. And it correlates back in with some of your other trail camera information, it gives you another piece of that puzzle. But yeah, you got to pick up, but follow your gut, dude. A lot of, that's where I think I've always had that ability to just say, screw it and just do it and follow my gut. And and not be worried about the consequences, I guess, because I considered it to be moving in the right direction, even if it was a mistake, if that makes any sense. But I think that's the big thing. You just got to follow your gut when you go in there, and the more experience you have, the better your gut gets. That's the best way I can describe it.
Right. I think, I don't know if this will make sense, but what I want to say is stop trying to make it harder than it is, because it's hard, but I think we make it harder by, trying to employ all of these methods to a T that only work on the average. And I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but it's just that you have to be flexible, and that's why first time in, the best time in, often works, because you're not blowing out the area by sitting there a bunch of times. And there's also a reason that you've never killed a huge deer out of the same stand, isn't there?
Yes and no. The sanctuary is one exception. I mean, now I've killed 2 different bucks out of the same blind. One last year, this year I killed mine out of the same setup. But it's a unique situation because it's southeast winds around here. You don't get very often. So when you do, it's kind of like this afternoon, we have a southeast wind, and it's just a spot I can get in and out of really easily without blowing anything. So there is a time and place to hunt certain spots over and over again. But I consider those hunts during the rut, in the middle of the rut, between, let's say, the 2nd or 3rd, 4th of November, going into 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th of November. Mm-hmm. That time frame, a hot doe changes everything. So where the hot doe is going to be, and that's where you hunt. And so, dude, I hunted the sanctuary 3 times, I think, before I killed my buck, maybe on the 4th hunt, and that seems like a lot, but that spot I can get away with it because my access is killer. And it's that time of year, a buck can either be there or he's not. If he is, you get a crack at him. But if he's not, even if you do spook deer, they scent check your stuff going in and out. You got to be focused on what buck you're worried about. For example, you were down hunting, and I told you, and you came in and you accessed along this field edge. And at the end of the hunt, you ended up cutting back through the timber because there were some deer that fed up toward the other way. And my comment was, well, so long as it's not one of the bucks we're hunting, who freaking cares? Blow them out. It doesn't matter. The important thing is not spooking the deer you're trying to hunt. But dude, that kind of goes against the norm or what you would, think. So I didn't blame you, because I'm like, well, that's what I would have done probably 10 years ago too. But, hanging out with different guys like Andre DeQuisto and stuff, it's some of the stuff he would always say was, I don't care if I blow those deer out. It's not the buck I'm after. And it's just okay, I guess, yeah, there is a point to it. It's not like they get together in the bedding area and the does fill them in. Oh, my God, you don't want to go past that stand over there on the edge because there was a guy in there and I smelled his tracks. That's just not the way deer are.
Right. It isn't. You're absolutely right. And again, those are the little things that, we don't spend a lot of time talking about. We spend a lot of time talking about these, overall tactics, and the overall tactics are good. But yeah, like you said, hunting with you down there changed a little bit of the way I'll hunt this next year coming up. And I don't hold a lot of hope for the rest of this year, and that's okay, because there's the ATA show and 100 million other things to do here in the off season. So we're all going to get real busy in a hurry. For those of you that aspire to be in the outdoor industry, it's still work.
And the other point too I want to make about that farm too is that's not the most fun place to hunt, because it's pretty limited in your options. Over the years, I've figured out a way to really control those options and minimize it. So okay, we got that little island spot. There's 2 spots to hunt there, 2 or 3. But I mean, I think a lot of people focus on a small area and think that they're just missing it by 50 yards or something. And so they're running and gunning and just constantly hunting the same small area and just thinking they're in the wrong tree type thing. Mm-hmm. And I just look at it as in sections almost. And then if you can, through experience, instead of trying to guess what tree, make them come past your tree by putting in a kill plot, or by having some standing food there, or some cover, or creating cover. You can kind of manipulate situations, but that's the unfun part about that farm is you can't really get too creative. I kind of have done that in the past just by setting it up. So then it's a matter of just hunting the spots that are good, and tweaking it accordingly. But that's the one tough part about that piece. There's just not a lot of timber to work with. If you got bigger sections of timber, then you can get a little more creative on how you're going to, come and go and do all that. But, one of the rule of thumbs that I think is worth reiterating is when I walk into a piece of property, particularly farmland where I got to walk a field edge in, I always walk the same trail out unless I have a strategy of why I'm not. For example, like let's say I didn't want to hunt that island anymore, and that's when I would have potentially made a lot of noise tearing down, even particularly making intentional metallic noise at last light, walking through the timber, making sure that I put twice as much scent in an area just to kind of literally push the deer out of that area so that in a future hunt, I could try to kill them in a different spot. But otherwise, I always walk the same trail in, same trail out, keep your scent in one straight line if you possibly can, because if they're going to cut one track, they're going to cut it, but don't increase your odds of them cutting it by stretching that any further than you have to from point A to point B, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably go on for days and days about things that I learned, but
what did you take away from Wisconsin this year? Like you hunted a bunch of new farmland, and some leases and things like that. Are there some spots that you are going to completely eliminate next year, or do you think really the shed season is going to probably be your time to shine?
There's, I don't know is the truth. A large part of the lease is still being logged. And it's going to change, and even in 2 years, it'll be different than it was this year. A large part of the lease was also in a public use program. So it was public hunting up until this year. So last year during the gun season, Joe and his 6 buddies could jump out of the truck in their Blaze Orange and drive it and shoot everything that moved. And, I think deer made a habit out of staying away from there in the season. So it's going to take a while to change some of those things. But the one thing that I probably did learn and will take away is just to, again, not overanalyze things. Take things for what they are. If it looks like a duck, then it is a duck, and try it. You're not going to know until you try it. But yeah, there's some places that I could eliminate, and then there's some places that I let just get into my head too much, like I referred to earlier. Like, oh my God, the thermals are going down in the evening and up in the morning, so I can never hunt there, even though there was. I mean, when Jackson shot the deer that he shot that we didn't find, I actually got to walk through there, and it is just loaded with sign, and I'm just like, oh God.
One of the things we use, and it's in our program every time we talk about, but I also forget about the old days. I can't imagine hunting with Ozonics anymore.
Right.
It makes it so much less mentally exhausting during the hunting season, because usually you get busted and snorted at and below a certain number of your stands if you're going to be killing these big bucks. I mean, you just got to put yourself in those situations to kill them, and sometimes that means you got to take risks, big risks, for those big rewards. So that's made hunting a lot more enjoyable to me, and it makes the job a lot easier because you can hunt stands far more aggressively with different winds than you would normally be able to.
Right.
And that's just statistically, it just reduces your odds of killing a big buck, just because you are maybe putting yourself outside of where you need to be slightly, just because you can't deal with the winds, or does are going to be downwind, so you just can't hunt those spots.
Right.
Where now I throw a caution to the wind on all those, so it makes it a lot easier to get aggressive. But just like what you were saying, don't overthink it. One of my secrets of during the hunting season is I don't plan more than one hunt out. I always wait till I'm finished with a hunt in one particular spot before I'm going to make a decision on where I'm going to go tomorrow. Of course, I'm thinking, all right, we got southeast wind today. Tomorrow's going to be northeast or northwest or maybe another southeast. How am I strategizing my hunt? So I kind of do a grand scheme planning, but man, I always like to go in and hunt that spot, see what I'm seeing. Let me see what the intel is going in. Even what the intel is coming out, leaving a stand a few minutes early just to be able to glass a couple plots on the way out or glass fields, all those things factor in. So I don't like playing too far in advance. And I think that's one of the strategies that I implore is trying to go by the seat of the pants a little bit. And I'll tell you, for an anal guy like me, that's hard to fathom. But it's what I actually enjoy about hunting more than anything now, is that whimsical space within hunting where you have to go with the flow and follow your gut. And that's the stuff that used to drive me nuts, and now that I enjoy the most, I think.
One thing that I guess I really feel lucky about is our partnership with Spartan Camera, and that's because I got to monitor things from 2 hours away that I wouldn't have been able to do had I had to drive down and check trail cameras. Now, I realize that not everybody's going to have the budget to have 3 or 4 Spartan cameras, but the one thing that it does, even if you've got one, the one thing that it does enable you to do, and I don't think we talk about it often enough, is you're looking at a picture that day of what happened that day. And the one thing that I noticed is if I had a camera in an area, I never put a camera right where I want to hunt. But if I had a camera in an area that I went in and hunted, and I now realize that I went in, that my access was flawed or part of my plan was flawed, I can look back and I can notice a absolute decline in overall deer movement in that area for at least a week.
Yeah.
So again, yeah, if you can get
for a traveling hunter, guys who are traveling out of state or hours to properties, oh my gosh, those cell cameras. I mean, they save you money in the long run because, dude, I know guys who literally travel just to check cameras in the summer and in the fall, and like that's what you basically do.
Right.
So, oh my Lord, yes. And the other cool part, what I dig about Spartan cameras, when you're running them on cell and you're getting those pictures as they happen, it's so much different than looking at them on your computer and looking at the time.
Right.
Because you're sitting on the couch, you just came in from the field, boom, you look up and you say, oh, that buck's there right now. And you look outside, okay, it's dark, it's 6:30 right now, okay. It puts you there right then when it happens. And it allows you to really kind of better mentally envision, all right, where do you think he came from? I wonder where he's bedded. But if you do it on a camera card and you got hundreds of pictures or dozens of pictures or thousands of pictures, and you're just zinging through them, it doesn't leave as big of an impression. So that's one thing I take from running Spartan cameras too, is that instant information puts you in that place at that time as it happens, and you know what the temperature is outside, you know what the wind direction is outside, you know what the temperature is going to be tomorrow morning. It gives you all of those factors right at that moment, and it's different, and you can learn more from that. Now, some people think, you're putting a Spartan camera out and getting a picture of a big buck and going and killing them. Like, if you can do that, then you're better than I am. But dude, it's another tool. But my God, for the traveling hunter, like those things, if you are hunting properties from out of state, and a lot of my buddies from Michigan, the same situation. They have leases in Illinois or leases in Wisconsin or leases in Indiana or whatever. And it is just the ultimate tool. And in that case, I truly believe they save you money.
Well, there you have it, a shameless plug for Spartan Camera. In addition to that, a recap of Todd and I season. Hopefully y'all took away some nuggets of information there that you can use, whether it's in your scouting plans for this coming up spring or next fall in the woods. With that, I'll begin to close out the show for today. I want to thank our sponsor, Ozonics, for helping us put this show on. Without them, we couldn't make this show happen. You've heard me say it throughout the year. Ozonics is now factory ship direct. I don't have any special deal for you right now. Ozonics will be running some year-end deals here. As we get into the new year, I'm sure they'll have some other stuff. They're also going to be at many of the trade shows around the United States. So look for them at one of their booths at many of the different deer and turkey expos or whatever they call it in your neck of the woods. With that, I'll begin to shut things down. I want to ask everybody if you could do us a favor and give us a review on iTunes. It would be of tremendous value to get as many reviews as we possibly could. If you can give us 5 stars, that would be great. If you can't, don't. Let us know what we're doing and what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. We want to hear it all. So with that, I'll just say, again, thanks to everyone for making 90 episodes possible. We look forward to the 100th, and who knows what it'll be, but I'm sure it's going to be fun. So everybody be safe. Have a great New Year. Jason out.